Building a first robotics competition robot can be difficult. We're here to help. Here's How to Build a Robot, the series. So now that we've learned how manufacturing and power transmission works, it's time to talk about what actually goes into these robots. First Robotics Competition has a series of subsystems and archetypes that are similar across all seasons. We're here to break those down and help you build some things with COTS parts that you can use from off the shelf. The basis of any FRC robot is going to start with a chassis. 99% of the time in the game, you are going to want to move from one location to another in order to complete the scoring tasks. Being able to build a drivetrain that is reliable and also well-built for the game is the basis of whatever you're going to be doing. One of the ways to build a reliable and robust and well-tested chassis is to use the KitBot chassis. This is the chassis that we're talking about on this robot specifically. This chassis uses a parallel plate style of construction, meaning that there are axles that span the width of two different plates on the side of each of the robots. This uses a sheet metal design, which may not be accessible to all teams in terms of creating your own custom design, but is what is available for all teams to use for this chassis specifically. You may use different styles of manufacturing for whatever chassis you decide to build. This is the basis for whatever you're creating on top of your robot, so you should choose something that is easily manufactured to your team and can be built upon in other ways. The drive rails are the things that are on the outside of your chassis. These are what are going to hold your gearboxes in place, whether you're using a traditional tank drivetrain or what teams tend to use now, which is a swerve drivetrain. When constructing a swerve drivetrain, teams often use corner modules. These are bolted to wherever you have on your drive rails with something that you might use as box tube or punch tube, depending on what your manufacturing capabilities are. Punch tube allows you to bolt to basically anywhere that is on grid and make sure that your mechanisms are sort of easily located despite not having the manufacturing capabilities that you may need for something that is custom CNC. Between your drive rails are what we call ladder bars. Ladder bars give your drivetrain and chassis its structure and allows you to mount things that are in between where the outside frame of your robot is. Beneath your drive rails and your ladder bars is the belly pan. The belly pan allows you to mount electronics, but also gives you some more mounting points for whatever you want to build up from that. Today, we're sitting down with our robot that we built of AndyMark parts designed to shoot the 2022 cargo game piece. We're going to break down our marketing robot from 2022 in terms of what subsystems it uses in order to shoot game pieces. We're going to start at the floor level with a linkage. A linkage is a type of arm that uses different bars in order to get the type of motion that you need with more support. This uses a 4-bar type of arm in order to pivot around a point and make sure that the intake is able to be deployed, but also able to withstand hits. Most linkages in FRC are parallel linkages, meaning that the points that follow each other here, and also down here, are parallel to each other. This means that you'll get the same type of linear motion on both ends as you would get with some other type of mechanism, but with more support. This is a top roller type of intake. That means that the top roller here is what contacts the game piece on the surface, while it uses the floor as the bottom part of that. There are many types of intakes in terms of FRC. Top rollers, side rollers, even rollers that have some sort of shelf underneath that allow you to control where the floor is when you move it up and down. This one is one of the more common types that we see and can be used year to year depending on what the diameter of the game piece is. This robot also uses Mecanum wheels, which are vectored intake wheels, to make sure that the robot, once it contacts a game piece, even if it's at the far edges of where it contacts, can bring it in and center it. Past the vectored intake wheels, we use the 2-inch compliant wheels in order to make sure that there is a lot of contact with the game piece on the surface. So wheels like this can squish and make sure that we have a lot of contact area, which means that we have positive control on the game piece. Having active control versus passive control on a game piece is very important. You want to be able to determine where you want that in your robot. On an intake, you always want active control of where the game piece is headed, because you want to be able to know where it is at all times. In games where you have a high volume amount of game pieces, you don't need active control on every single game piece at all times. This means that you can store it in a hopper system, but you don't need to have rollers on every side of it at all times. So in terms of power transmission, we talked a little bit about that last video, but one of the things I want to point out when actually designing your robot subsystem is that you want to protect your motors. So notice how this motor is mounted such that it is not outside the frame perimeter at any point. This protects the robot from any hits that you might have outside your frame perimeter, and also keeps the center of gravity closer to the robot. This is belted down to this pulley here, which drives this shaft, which drives this chain of shafts as well. Finally, once you're in possession of the game piece and you're in position and that you want to launch the ball somewhere, the robot transfers the game piece up into the launcher. There are three main types of launchers in FRC: flywheels, catapults, and linear punches. What we have here is a flywheel. Being able to manufacture a flywheel can require some precision manufacturing. There are some options that vendors have. We have the AndyMark launcher in a box that allow teams to easily prototype and get that level of precision that they need in order to use a launcher successfully. When designing a launcher, it's important to note that the motors that you're powering these things with are heavy, and often you don't want them high up, but you do want your launcher to be as high up as possible because then you have less distance from the goal to your launcher. That means more precision, more accuracy. So when designing these things, it's important to note that the heavy motor, you should use your power transmission to go from the motor up to the flywheel, making sure that you keep the heavy things down low. In games where you're launching multiple game pieces in a row, it's important to consider inertia. If you're launching just a single game piece, that means that once you rotate up to speed, your game piece is launched, you know what speed it has been launched at. But as the game piece goes through the flywheel system, the flywheel slows down because of the friction and the launch and all the power that's going into the system. So you have to account for that. In order to mechanically account for that, you can use a flywheel, which is a weighted thing that either attaches to the shaft that the flywheel's on or goes inside of the wheels itself. AndyMark has these that bolt directly onto the stealth wheels that people like to use for flywheels. The final common subsystem on this robot is the climber. Climbers are sort of a wild card year to year. We don't really know what sort of climbing task the endgame might be, but a lot of the times you can use a linear system, like an elevator or an arm, that is applied to climbing. The climber in a box that AndyMark has is basically an elevator. It's a telescoping tube system that uses power transmission to spring out and then pull down. It uses string to pull down and uses constant force springs to spring upwards. Even though climbing is something that changes year to year, there are some constants that teams can look at in terms of what archetype they want to use. Being able to pull up on a bar is one of the things that we see a lot, as well as being able to sustain being up on that bar after time equals 0. Our next guest is FRC 3940 Cybertooth's 2025 robot. There are a number of mechanisms here that are subsystems that we see year to year that we don't see on the marketing robot. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the ARM subsystem. ARMs are really common in FRC. They're one of the most widely used things to do a number of tasks. They allow you to do two things, one of which is to get something to a different height from which it started, and the other is to rotate that object. So where you start here, you end up in a different orientation up here. On this robot, we have a single joint arm. This is, like it says, an arm that has a single joint, a single point of motion. On the end of this arm, you'll notice that the power transmission is located where the center of the arm rotates. This is because we don't want as much force on the end as there is in the center. So we've decreased the amount of weight that is at the end of this. In FRC, you'll also see a number of multi-jointed arms. These are arms with multiple pivot points in terms of where the arm actually pivots from. You can get a lot of different motion from this, but it is very difficult to program. So be sure that if you go for a multi-jointed arm design, that you have some experience with programming them and you have a reason to want to do multi-jointed arms. Some of the reasons that you could want to do this is that you have active control over where your endpoint is. So you can use multiple joints to determine where those points end up. The final common subsystem on FRC robots is the elevator. Now, there are many ways to design and build an elevator, but there are a number of COTS systems that you're able to get that help make this process easier. An elevator is a very complicated subsystem and should be treated as such. Even for experienced teams, these systems can be very difficult to design, tune, and make sure that they work consistently. This elevator uses the SDS build blocks in order to form where the elevator can pass upwards through itself. It's mainly constructed of box tubing, that's punch tubing. This allows things to bolt to it in the grid fashion and may be useful for teams that don't have CNC manufacturing capabilities. Power transmission in an elevator is something that your team will have to choose what to use for. Many teams have found success with rope, chain, and belt, depending on what they're able to get and what they're able to manufacture. This robot uses rope in order to achieve upwards motion and uses gravity to achieve downwards motion. Finally, on this robot, we also have an intake. This intake was designed to grab coral from the floor and uses a dual roller system in order to do that. This roller goes up against the floor, and this one is the top roller, much like the other robot. You'll notice that on this intake, the power transmission is very important. So in order to pivot the intake in and out, it uses a motor that is inside the frame perimeter, and it uses chain in order to put the intake down and back. Power transmission from the motor runs from the motor here, out to this intake here, and then it uses a flipped belt here in order to provide different direction from the top roller to the bottom roller. There are so many resources out there that the community has put out about looking at past robots, subsystems, and archetypes. In terms of looking for FRC CAD, there are a lot of teams that have their CAD just out there online. You can go look for that. Also be sure to check out any robots that have videos online of students going through all the systems and breaking them down, such as the Behind the Bumpers series. It's a great resource. And this has been How to Build a Robot Part 3, all about subsystems and archetypes. Thanks for watching.